Are you too busy, too stressed out, unhealthy? Then this is the place for you. Welcome to Balanced Living for Busy Professionals, where we help you create wellness and balance with a holistic approach that will work for you, even with the busiest of schedules, so you can live the life you want. And now, here's your host, Diane Randall.
Hello and welcome to Balanced Living for Busy Professionals. I'm Diane Randall, your host. Thank you for listening. And if you're new to the show, I want to thank you for joining today. I'm really excited to have you here and listening. Balanced Living for Busy Professionals provides the best inner tools and strategies to help you break free of any habits, patterns, or attitudes that may be keeping you stuck in place. You can change your life even with the busiest schedule, because the main thing people say is, I can't make any changes. I can't do anything because I'm so busy. I'm here to tell you that there's no such thing as being too busy. And in today's episode, I'll be talking to my guests about how you can get crystal clear on what you want. I'm so excited to have Bev Martin, who is a professional intuitive, business owner, and coach, originally from Johannesburg, South Africa. She changed her life almost as much as a person can. She moved to a new country, fell in love, opened her own business, and became a parent. That was 20 years ago. Bev is a professional intuitive and spiritual coach who loves to help creatives, entrepreneurs, business owners to be inspired and to bring out their brilliance. And today she's here to help you bring out your brilliance. So I want you to stay tuned until the very end. Bev Martin, welcome to Balanced Living for Busy Professionals.
Thank you so much, Diane. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, I'm just happy you're here. I love talking to intuitives. I really do. But I love, what brought you to the States from Johannesburg?
From Johannesburg. Well, originally, I was an exchange student at age 17 and came from Johannesburg with my little suitcase for a year to live with one family in a teeny little town called Tootle, Washington.
Oh, my goodness.
Which is it's on the slopes of Mount St. Helens, and that was the year that Mount St. Helens turned into an erupting volcano.
Oh, my goodness. So how was that for you?
Well, that was really very exciting and sort of strange, because in South Africa, before I left to come as an exchange student, we had been studying volcanoes, and I was the one to say to the geography teacher, why are we studying this? No one will ever see a volcano. So I think I may have made it happen.
Oh, wow. Isn't that interesting?
So I had been an exchange student and lived with a family that year, which was very exciting. And then, honestly, it was my intuition that made me come back to this country and to the Northwest. On one beautiful spring day, I was in a car going across one of the bridges in Portland, and I just looked, and Portland is a very pretty city, especially in the spring. And I just had this knowing kind of just arrive. It wasn't a decision. It was a knowing. It was just, oh, I'm going to live here. And so that was where it began.
Now, we talk about being an intuitive. For the listeners who don't know what an intuitive is, can you share what that is?
I'd be glad to. And I would also say to each of you, you are your own intuitive. Every time you have a funny feeling or something just tells you, and, the more analytical among us might say, well, it was just my common sense, and that'd be fine if you call it that, because we have so many different ways of knowing. For me, as a professional intuitive, my job is to use that same sense of knowing on behalf of my clients. Ideally, in a perfect world, my real mission is to teach each person how to listen to their own intuition so they don't need me. And when times get tough, when things are difficult, or when our signals get crossed, we get a little static on the line, my clients can come to me and say, so this is my sense. help me untangle this. And I, as a professional intuitive, my job is to use my own intuition on behalf of my clients and to help them listen to themselves more deeply and to know what they already know. I always say, if you come and see me, you're going to hear what you already know, and then you'll know you know it. And
Wow.
you can't pretend you don't know it.
So how does intuition inform us in our daily lives? Is there a certain way we have to be in order to hear our intuition, or is it just going to say, hey, I'm here? How does it work?
It does both. It does both. But, so oftentimes if something really needs to come through to us, our intuition will crank up the volume. But I prefer that we pay such close attention that we can hear it when it's a whisper. Because life does have a way, if we haven't paid attention, when things get loud, that's not always as comfortable as things might be. If we're not paying attention, the volume gets loud. I like to encourage myself and others to tune in on a regular basis, whether that's just in the morning when you have your tea or your coffee. You just listen to yourself. It may be just scanning your body. It may be setting an intention for the day. It can be a prayerful intent, or something that just says, this is my goal, this is my outcome for this day, or this meeting, or this upcoming event later on in the day, so that we're sort of pointing our awareness and our consciousness the way that we would like it to go. And our intuition then is engaged. It's almost like putting on the GPS in the car. Our intuition says, oh, that's what we're going for? Got it. And so then that inner voice, when it knows where you would like to go, you've set your intention, it can go beep, 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 if we're veering off. So here's an example. Perhaps I might set myself the intention, I might be going into a meeting that maybe I know that tensions will run high because of the nature of the meeting. So I might set my intention to be calm, to breathe, to see the light and the goodness in each person there, and to speak clearly, that whatever my intention might be. And my intuition will take that GPS coordinate and go, great. And then if in the meeting I feel myself changing my tone, or even if I'm not aware of it, my intuition will go, hey, Bev, remember your intention. And the way that it can get my attention is my body could be an indicator. I might feel my gut get a little tight, or my shoulders come up a little closer to my ears. It could even be, and often is, just a voice, an inner voice that says, remember your intention. So intuition can connect with us and we with it in a multiple of ways, because intuition wants to be able to guide us to, creating the life we truly want to live, your lovely phrase. And when we engage with it and say, here's my intention, help me with this, help me with that. And of course, we're also asking for help from something greater than ourselves. But intuition is a wonderful little onboard indicator of how we're doing with our intention.
You talked about that inner voice, that listening to the inner voice, but we also know there's another side to that inner voice that's not so enlightening, I guess. That inner voice, that constant, incessant noise.
That pain in the neck one?
Yeah, the pain in the neck one that won't even allow us to hear our intuition.
Yeah, you are right on. Exactly right. And, I love knowing that I'm not the only one with one of those voices, but here's my recommendation for that voice is, interestingly enough, it's not unlike a child tugging at your skirt, that when you really listen to it, it can actually become more polite. And so I like to encourage people to train that critical voice, to say, all right, thank you for what you mean well for me. I'm going to assume you mean well. And thank you. And it's a little disarming for that critical voice to be appreciated, for one thing. It's like, because as you know, if you resist it, it has all sorts of ways to just keep being a nuisance. But I listen to it as if it means well, and I thank it for that. So I say, thank you for, and assuming you mean well, here's the question. I say, what do you want for me that's good?
Mm.
And it's a wonderful question. And over time, same as if it were a child, being persistent, is when we listen, it doesn't have to be quite so naggy. And so when you listen, you say, what do you want from me that's good? Oftentimes that critical voice will tell you what its outcome is for you. Even if the way it was trying to get you there was kind of annoying, when you can hear that inner voice say, well, what I really want for you here is peace or calm. Often we could argue, well, boy, if you want peace for me, why? You're nagging me. But we listen carefully and we say, thank you for what you want for me. It's good. And then often we could say, is there another way that in this moment I can get peace for myself? And that voice, when it knows that you've listened to it in a good way, and that you too have the same outcome for yourself as it does for you, it can calm down. So I recommend, don't resist that voice. Really listen to it, and listen to it with love and compassion, as if it were a part of you that means well and doesn't have the whole playbook. It can often be, as you know, a little come from fear. And so when we love it, just love it, love it, love it, and listen to it, it can become more polite and speak more gently. And when that voice knows that you really will listen, it can softly say what it wants you to hear without getting too demanding.
That's beautiful. It's so interesting that we're talking today. I taught a workshop on last Saturday, called Negative Self-Talk.
Wow.
And what was so beautiful about that workshop is the people that showed up never even knew that they could even talk to that voice.
Wow.
It was, I mean, I get it. I remember it, that, it's when you're in the moment and that chatter is part of who you are. What was so great about that workshop is, just like you said, they became aware of that voice. And it was so awesome to see people say, what? I don't have to listen to that voice.
It's not the boss of me?
Yes. And it was such an awareness. I mean, when you understand that, what you just said, it is so powerful. And one lady says to me, she says, well, this will help. She said, I guess this is like helping you with your self-esteem. I said, you could look at it like that. I said, for me, I think of it as freedom.
Fabulous.
I said at one time, I looked at it as self-esteem. And I'm not saying that it's not, but what I feel today is freedom.
Freedom. Yeah, I love that you're helping people with this very thing. It's really important.
I love it. And you say you have a quote that you love. The best way to predict the future is to create it. I want to talk about that.
Well, as an intuitive, a lot of people seem to think that as an intuitive, I know the whole future. And I really don't.
You don't?
I really don't. I'm so sorry. So sorry I don't have the winning lotto numbers. But I think of intuition as an excellent way to guide us to the life we've come to live, and to help us navigate. It is kind of like GPS, where it says, let's go slow here and take the next turn. And so I love to help people create the future they want, rather than, there really is no such thing as sitting passively by and just going, oh, by the way, what future has some, benevolent angel mapped out for me? It's like, well, guess what? You are the benevolent angel, and you get to map it out, with yourself, with your talents, with your gifts, and be engaged in it. Because if we believe that, it's a passive process, or that the future's already written, what would be the fun in that?
What would be the fun in that? And you talk about how does one start that process?
Oh, of creating the future?
Yes, of creating the future.
One of my favorite things to even dream about, and that's the first step, is it comes with, first of all, to be able to imagine the kind of future you'd like to inhabit. And usually that means thinking a lot bigger than most of us do. Because we're adults and we're reasonable and logical and we can, figure stuff out, people tend to, in my opinion, a bit of a generalization, we tend to match our dreams to what we think we can manage. Like we match the dream how. We go, well, I know I could do that, so I guess that's my dream. And what I really love to encourage people to do is to really first dream. Dream as if it would all fall into place. Like, find out what it is you really, really want. Don't just match the want with the how. It's like, I don't know. Do you like cooking shows?
I don't cook.
You not?
I don't cook. But I am around them. I know people that watch them religiously.
Right. I'm a bit of a foodie, and so I love the cooking shows. And there's one really, it's more entertaining than anything. It's called Chopped. And what they do on that show is they give some cooks a basket of really ridiculous ingredients that don't go together and say, here, make something. Okay. And I think of like dreaming too small is a bit like that. When we say, these are the wacky ingredients I have, I wonder what I'm going to make. Instead, I propose we say, if I could have whatever I want to have or be or do, what would that be? So that it is so beautiful that our heart goes, oh, that would be wonderful. So we first get that dream clear. And so until we know, oh yeah, that is something I really want. And it may take a bit of time to keep coming back to it, to go, does this meet my values? Is it what I really want? If at the end of my long and healthy life I look back and I achieved this, does this really matter? Does it have meaning and purpose? And so when we've got the dream out that it feels almost like, ooh, so unattainable and so wonderful and so delicious, then we know, okay, that's the right one. Then we go to the how. And actually this strategy of first getting the whole dream out, almost bigger than we can manage, so that it's exciting and wonderful, what we really, really want. Getting that out first, and then going to the how, and then handling the inner critic. This is a strategy that was modeled from Walt Disney.
Oh, talk about that.
Great. So Walt Disney figured, and of course we know about the imagination of Walt Disney. We get to see it on the screen, hippos in tutus and most amazing things that most of us were fortunate enough to see growing up. So Walt Disney separated out the three parts of creativity. One is the dreamer. And so when I facilitate this in workshops, I have people imagine that they're lying on the grass underneath the Milky Way and dreaming really in a limitless way, as big as you can, which is a bit different from a fantasy, but we'll say a bit about that. A fantasy is not a dream, but a dream has that quality of, oh, my heart is engaged. I want this experience or opportunity or contribution that I make to the world. I want that. There's a little flutter in the heart that says, oh yeah. So Walt Disney had all the artists and creatives and dreamers in a completely separate building to, let's say, the realists, who in the case of Walt Disney would have been the accountants and technical people. And so he let the dreamers dream completely, and only when the dream was completed completely out there and having that quality of excitement. Then they'd go to, let's call it the practical realist, and say, okay, how? How will you make this happen? So then they could engage their special skills, which is like, whoa, some of these dreams are really out there, but that's their challenge now, is to make it real. So for us, those steps are the same. Dream, dream, dream. Get it big. Could be a vision board. Could be a whiteboard. I like to have my visions where I can really see them, like up on a sticky note, high up on a mirror, or something like that. Get the dream. Live with it for a few days. Make sure that it's really exciting and engaging your heart. And only then, when you know it's the right dream, then you sit down with the calculator or the calendar or the practical and go, how am I going to make this happen? Because having it in that order means that the dream is big and compelling enough. And then it might be a challenge to make it happen. But if we do it the other way, that we only dream as big as we already know how to do, we might be limiting ourselves.
Wow. So what's the difference between dreaming and imagination?
They are connected. In order to really dream, we have to be able to imagine.
Okay.
We have to. So imagination, I think of as is that delicious place between the conscious mind and the soul. Because it is our imagination that helps us even think about things that are big enough or great enough or wonderful enough that engage us. Fantasy is different than that. Fantasy is unrealistic in a different way. So to give you a real-life example, fantasy was me some years ago lying on the couch eating bonbons, reading Total Fitness.
Total Fitness.
So that's fantasy. That's going like, oh, let me just lie here reading this book while I lay on the couch eating bonbons, and if I just think hard enough, I'll suddenly emerge totally fit. Well, it's not going to happen.
So how do we take that and put it into something real that we can build?
So that is where we would use imagination, and then also some great questions.
Okay.
So let's use that example of fitness. So if I ask myself or a client, what do you want? And they said fitness. I'd be like, what's that like? When you are fit in the way you'd like to be, what's that like? And I'd be listening carefully. I'm crazy about language and thinking and how those two things go together. So I'm listening carefully that the language and the thing that they want are in alignment. So I would be careful if somebody said, I don't want to be unfit. That's not an outcome. It's not taking them in the right direction. The dream is, I do want to be fit. I will ask them, when you feel the way you want to feel, what will you see? And they might say, I'll see myself slim in the mirror. What will you hear? I'll hear encouraging voices as I cross the finishing line at a race, perhaps. What will you feel? So we're taking it from a conceptual dream, and now we're bringing it into the body, because in the body, in this world, is where a dream is realized. Otherwise, it just stays a dream.
Mm-hmm.
So then I have a series of questions, and I do the exact same thing with my clients as I would do with myself. I'd ask, when I have that, this thing that I'm going for, let's say fitness, when I have that, what else will change? Because sometimes there's even a greater dream behind that one that we want to become conscious of. And then when we're connected with that, how much easier is it to get off the couch when I know my body has had an experience in the present tense, present time? I'm asking it, when you're fit, what will you see? What will you hear? What will you feel? What will that do for you? What else will change? A series of questions that help the dream to really become three-dimensional. And I'm asking it as if I've already achieved it, which is where some imagination comes into place. But as you ask yourself as if you've already achieved it, it's as if you've gone forward in time, you have it now, And your body and experience for almost any dream can try it on. Go like, oh, yeah, what else is different? What other parts of my system change in a good way when I have this result? So you're future traveling, you're trying on the change that you're wanting to make, and you're checking it out. And we actually do check it out very carefully because, as you know, some changes might have an unintended consequence. We want to check it out. We want to be sure that everything that we're designing the dream and the steps towards it and handling that inner critic, that when we get to what we want, it is where we really want to go.
Wow. So that's what you mean by creating the future. So how do we hold ourselves accountable once we see what we want and we figure out the how? How do we stay present in that?
It's a great question. Much of it is when you've embodied the dream ahead of time with imagination, it kind of pulls you forward. So some of the old way or a different way of, goal setting, oftentimes if we do just like ordinary goal setting, we need to find our motivation to go towards the goal. And so it's a little bit like having, being poked in the behind with a stick, like pushing us.
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, ouch, ooh, we're getting sort of poked in the behind towards our goal. But when the dream is compelling and it's something we really want, and we've used our imagination to sort of go there and be there for a while, it starts to pull us towards it in a much more compelling way. And, your question is such a good one, is like, how do we hold ourselves accountable? Is in many significant shifts, we're not only doing something different, we're becoming someone different.
Mm.
It's like we're saying, like, who do I need to be to step into this reality? And it could be, I need to be a more courageous me, or I need to be a more compassionate self. Like, there'll be some aspect of our being that will need to shift. And so part of accountability will be using your intuition and also your questions with yourself to go, in what way in every day am I becoming closer to the me that I really want to be? And I tend to think of that me as always there, just under, like a sculptor frees the marble and says, oh, that was in there all along. I think of our true self as being in there all along. So it's more like letting go of whatever isn't you, which is in many ways easier, some ways easier, can be challenging, than having to reinvent or hold ourselves accountable in a hard way. It's a sort of a soft way of letting go of anything that isn't you.
And it seems like the older I get, the more I learn that it is about the letting go of everything that's not you. It seems to be more of that than anything else. Once you start getting clear, you don't know that always.
It's so true. And it's not always easy, because whatever we've held on to that isn't us at some point was useful. Maybe we built up a bit of a tough attitude at some point to protect ourselves, or we get really attached to a certain way of being. So, letting go of what isn't us isn't always easy, because it served us at some point. And, I'm at the moment working with my own coach on some things. I go, wow, who knew that was still there? So it's the most wonderful approach to become who we are, and we need support. It isn't always easy.
It isn't always easy, and a lot of times we're very unconscious about that until we get some help or something happens in our life to bring us some kind of awareness. We literally don't know until that moment that, oh, I didn't realize that was still there.
That's exactly right. exactly right.
So for the people that are listening to this and they really hear all your intuitive tips on how to create a future, what is one thing the listeners could do tomorrow to start the path to creating the future that they want?
What a great question. I would say dream it. Get a nice big, whiteboard. I love, big places. I'm not at all an artist, but I would recommend that you get a big sheet of paper or a whiteboard or something that you can put some words or some dreams on. Dream it, and here's a series of questions. Ask yourself, like, what is it that I really, really, really want to have happen? What do I want to have happen? How do I want to be? Ask yourself that, the desire question. Make sure that it's stated in the positive, in other words, that it is what you do want, because getting rid of something you don't want is not the same as a dream that you're going for. Your unconscious mind needs to see, like, oh, that's where we're going.
Okay.
And then ask yourself questions like, what will I see? What will I hear? What will I feel when I have this? What will having this do for me that's even more important? And then investigate your resources, because most often when we make a significant shift and we go towards something that we really want, we don't do it alone. And so consider, like, what resources do I need? Do I need my family to understand that I'm going to be doing this thing? Or do I need some education on a little bit of the how? Do I need to give myself time and space? Do I need, what do I need? And then ask yourself, what do I already have to help me with this?
Wow.
Because we often forget that question.
Yes. What do I already have? I'm too focused on what I need.
Right, because, I can get so stuck on what do I need? Well, I need a web page and this and that, and we can delay ourselves with a long list of what we think we need. And really, in many ways, it's like, well, what's the simplest? What do I need? What support? And what do I already have? And the what do I already have can be, determination, stubbornness. It can be, I really want this and I won't give up. It can be, I already wrote half the book and I can just go complete it, So remember to ask yourself that question, like, what do I already have? And then in your imagination, travel to the future as if you've already achieved this fully and completely. You're celebrating it. You've got it going on. You might imagine that you're, sitting with people who love you, who are appreciating you for this shift that you've made. You're seeing the consequences, the positive benefits of having made it. So go into that future as fully as you can and feel it out. Feel it out. It's also a good place from which to look back and say, now that I've made the change, of course we're time traveling to the future. Now that I've made the change, what steps did I take to get here? Can be more compelling than the other way around. Oh boy, I got to climb that mountain. How am I going to do it? Rather, I'm on the top of the mountain. I'm feeling the cool air on my cheek. What steps did I take? So it's a little bit of a mind shift that I found very, very helpful in helping people create the future.
Bev, I really want to thank you for your insight, your wisdom, your intuition, and helping us, all of us, get clear on what we want and how to create a future. That was just some beautiful, beautiful information that you just shared. Can you tell the listeners how to get in touch with you?
Certainly. My website is my name, so that makes it easy. It's bevmartin.com. And I'm on Facebook at Bev Martin as well. And the website's an easy way just to be in touch. Drop me an email, anything that you'd like to be in touch with me. I will have in the future some intuition classes that are going to be online now. They've always been in real life, and now with the online world, that's even easier to do from the comfort of your home. So, yeah, bevmartin.com.
Bev's Information will be in the show notes of this episode of Balanced Living for Busy Professionals. I want to know what you guys think about the episode. Drop me a line or a voicemail. Your feedback helps us to bring the best topics and information that you want to hear to help you make the changes that you want in your life.
Thank you for listening to Balanced Living for Busy Professionals. This podcast is sponsored by DianeRandallConsults.com. If you like this show, the best way to support it is by leaving 5-star feedback on iTunes. And please, feel free to email your questions, comments, and suggestions to feedback@DianeRandallConsults.com. Until next week, namaste.